Hello friends, I am Professor Smita Jha from the Department of Humanities and Social Sciences, and I am here to discuss research methodology in Humanities and Social Sciences with a special reference to ethics of writing and plagiarism. Well, as I said repeatedly, that research is a serious endeavor. It is a very serious process to produce some piece of literature, some piece of information that should have its own, authenticity. So when we talk of authenticity, legality, well, it is very important to discuss this particular aspect of ethics and plagiarism. Ethics is a judgmental aspect of human conduct. It is the science of right or wrong. It is not a natural science, but right is the fundamental part of ethics. In any circumstance, the right part of human behavior should be exercised and wrong must be avoided. For example, a person should follow the laws of their country. Laws are nothing more than motivators for individuals to follow the right path. When someone adheres to the laws, it is akin to obeying authority and fulfilling the duty aspect of human behavior to achieve ethically framed goals. Ethics directs us to achieve a particular goal in life. Like other branches of knowledge, physics, with various aspects of energy and motion, ethics deal with the ultimate goals of life. Ethics provides us with ways to achieve these life goals. The attainment of ultimate life goal is at the core of ethics. In practical aspects of life, results are given central focus. Ethical practices aim to achieve inner health or inner harmony. Ethics differs from art in terms of ultimate outcomes. Art requires a set of skills and materials to produce an object, whereas ethics pertains to the inner human qualities of one's life. Individual or personal responsibility we talk about then consist of the moral obligations of an individual towards their action and decision. The actions of an individual reflect in the consequences. No one is bothered about anything when everything is going well. The situation changes when something wrong happens, where here comes the responsibility in ethical behavior. The wrong consequences of individual behavior test the character of an individual in taking ownership of mistakes and aligning behavior with ethical principles. If we talk of social responsibility, the well-being of society should be positively influenced by the responsible behavior of individuals and organizations. The profit motive of a business organization should be balanced with ethical business practices. The level of social responsibility depends on how well individuals and organizations are concerned with various social issues such as inequality, environmental sustainability, and discrimination. When we talk of professional responsibility, every profession has its own set of rules, clients, and stakeholder. Professions such as medicine, law, education, finance have ethical responsibilities towards these rules and stakeholders. Maintaining professional standards and acting in the best interest of the profession enhances professional responsibility. When we talk of research ethics, when it comprises guidelines that aid researchers in conducting careful research. These guidelines establish norms of conduct that differentiate between right and wrong action. It refers to a set of moral principles that guide researchers to achieve scientific excellence and deliver optimal results. Ethics is concerned with human behavior that adds value to morality or moral principles. When it comes to research, ethics plays an important role in promoting original and excellent work. The fundamental objective of research is to add value to the subject domain as well as to society. Considering the time and money involved in research work, the broader picture of any scientific investigation should positively impact members of society. It is impossible to add any kind of value to the subject domain and society without following ethical practices in research. The number of publications one produces has become a yardstick of recognition and prestige among the scientific community, academia. Thus, to prevent themselves getting buried in obsolescence, researchers are prompted to publish more. Now, this pressure for publication leads to an increase in research misconduct, including plagiarism. This in turn compromises the reliability and integrity of the research. Well, there has been a surge in the number of publication in the present scenario, and so is the incidence of intellectual dishonesty. Ensuring scientific integrity, authenticity, and ethicality of publication is increasingly recognized as a role of editors as gatekeepers for good and responsible research publishing. For this purpose, the Committee on Publication Ethics has introduced a set of principles for editors to deal with suspected misconduct. While falsification and fabrication are some common forms of intellectual dishonesty, we can aim some point to discuss on the act of, plagiarism. So, the term plagiarism originates from Latin word plagium, which means kidnapping. Therefore, in academia, plagiarism refers to unethically copying another's ideas, work, or words without giving the appropriate credit. The World Association of Medical Editors defines plagiarism as the use of others' published and unpublished ideas or words, or other intellectual property without attribution or permission, and presenting them as new and original rather than derived from an existing source. In addition, the global leading authority of regulating publication ethical practice, COPE, has defined it as when somebody presents the work of others, data, words, theories, as if they were his or her own and without proper acknowledgement, that is, confirming that this has been written by somebody else. However, some of these definitions may not attribute to self-plagiarism. During the medieval period, plagiarism had been very common. The first act of plagiarism was reported by the Roman poet Martial. His work had been recited by other poet Fidentius and had been claiming credit for his work. Now, during the 17th century, where an individual's skill were honored, many renowned artists and authors copied others' ideas and work without consequences. Benjamin Franklin, Shakespeare, and Leonardo da Vinci are examples of famous figures of history who had plagiarized others' work, an idea as their own. However, by 18th century, copyright laws were implemented by the British Parliament by enacting the Status of N Copyright Act 1709 8 NC 21. Now, there are types of plagiarism or category of plagiarism. Depending on author's intent, plagiarism could be intentional or unintentional, and it takes many different forms. Direct plagiarism, this is a form of intentional plagiarism where the author's work is copied verbatim of other author's text without any acknowledgement or using quotation marks or giving credit to the original source. Mosaic plagiarism, patchwork plagiarism. Here the writer borrows phrases and ideas from the original work without acknowledgement or replaces with synonyms. Self-plagiarism, that is duplication. This is where the author borrows significance from his or her own previous work, and here the author has used one's own data or text that has been published before without specifying the source. Self-plagiarism is further classified as duplicate, redundant publication, augmented publication, segmented publication, and text recycling. Now, duplicate, redundant publication where authors submit the same manuscript in different other journal unethically. Augmented publication, authors modify the previously published manuscript by editing the methodology, scope, and by inserting additional data. Segmented publication, also known as salami slicing, occurs when authors segment larger studied into several smaller studied. Text recycling, when large section of the author's previously published work is copied in their manuscript. If an author decides to publish a translation of his/her manuscript published in a non-English journal to an English journal, the author is required to follow the requirements issued by International Committee of Medical Journal Editors. Whether it is an actual scientific misconduct is a matter of controversy. It may violate the expectation of the reader who is trapped in the misconception of reading novel facts. Secondary source plagiarism, this is when a researcher uses a secondary source but only cites the primary source. Invalid source plagiarism, in this instance, the source is quoted or referenced incorrectly or inaccurately and the reader is misled. The main purpose of this is to increase the length of the list of references, concealing his/her own inadequacy in research. Repetitive research, well, this is the repetition of data or text from a similar study with a similar methodology in a new study without proper ascribing the previous work. Then replication is when a single paper is submitted to multiple journals for publication. And misleading attribution, this is either inaccurate or insufficient listing of authors or when author cited in the paper had not made any contribution to the paper. An extreme scenario where a researcher totally claims a study manuscript of another researcher and submits as his own. Unethical collaboration, when the result and outcome of a certain work that are a result of a collaboration without citing the collaborative nature of the study or the participants involved. Complete plagiarism, an extreme scenario where a researcher totally claims a study manuscript of another researcher and submits as his own. Now the question is, why is plagiarism a problem? Why it is a serious offense? Reproducing and duplicating already existing and outdated facets is a waste of resources and time. In addition, it is unfair by the reader as they will be misled on crucial scientific information. The original author is deprived of due credit for his genuine efforts. Consequently, intellectual dishonesty, including plagiarism, impedes progressive development of the scientific community and leads to confusion. As stated previously, why it is rising, so the pressure to publish is a key reason for rise in plagiarism or pervasive publish or perish mantra of the professional community seeking academic glory. Financial pressure and personal ambition of poorly educated individuals were identified as the root cause for his emerging predicament. Lack of knowledge on plagiarism and citation practice in the scientific community is another major reason for increased plagiarism. The ease with each chunks of text can be copied and pasted using computer software two leads to rise in plagiarism. Plagiarism can be punished, and one can come under copyright infringement. Plagiarism violates those rights by copying the original work without giving due credit. However, plagiarism can be committed from sources that are out of copyright. Similarly, ideas and facts can be plagiarized as they are not protected by copyright. Although plagiarism is rarely witnessed, being convicted under civil or criminal law, they are not unheard of. Plagiarism, the act of using another person's work or ideas without proper citation, is a serious ethical violation. Avoiding plagiarism requires understanding what it is, citing all sources properly, and using quotation marks when necessary. So, why plagiarism is unethical? Theft of intellectual property, that is, plagiarism, is essentially stealing someone else's work, taking their ideas and words and passing them off as your own. Benefits at the expense of other. Yes, the plagiarizer gains an unfair advantage by benefiting from works they didn't create, while the original author's work is not recognized. Undermine academic integrity. Plagiarism erodes trust and credibility within the academic community by misrepresenting the authenticity of research and contribution. Now, what is plagiarism ethics? Every piece of work has an original author, and not giving the person credit is the same as literary theft. It is stealing an idea and passing it off as your own. This is done in various ways, and not all forms of plagiarism are the same, but they are all unethical. But what does ethical mean, and why is plagiarism unethical? So, ethics are a set of principles that govern behavior. Therefore, unethical behavior goes against the grain of the founding principle of particular organization or institution. The academic world has its own set of ethics, and plagiarism is pushback against academic integrity. And plagiarism can do much damage. This is because at the heart of the issue, plagiarism is theft. And as mentioned, not all types of plagiarism are the same, nor are the intentions behind them. But whether the act is committed by a student, journalist, lecturer, it is still theft. And typically, plagiarism results in the thief receiving benefit or success from this stealing. The student likely passes the test, for instance, or the journalist start trending, the lecturer has convinced an audience of their new idea. In this way, plagiarism is not only stealing the words, but also the acclaim of original author. And in addition to the act of theft, plagiarism is a violation of ethics because it is deliberate. There are protocols already in place for citing sources and identifying one source from another. To ignore these requirements is to steal someone else's work and take whatever credit might come your way. Some argue that some forms of plagiarism are acceptable because specific ideas or words cannot be owned. This is not the case. Intellectual property means that ideas and words can be protected under copyright law. To violate this law is to violate someone's intellectual property. Intellectual property can be published by an author or stated in a lecture hall to an audience. Ideas or products or words can all be intellectual property. And to be in violation of plagiarism, ethics on this level can mean consequences. If an idea is worth sharing, it is worth sharing the original author's name as well. To eliminate the problem, there are ways to cite sources, and yet there are still people who do not adhere to these requirements. Depending on your situation, this behavior can also reflect poorly on you. For example, when a student cheats, the university might endure some embarrassment, but primarily the blame falls on the student. However, if a marketing company relies on series of freelancers to generate content for their clients, if there are instances of plagiarism in this context, that will reflect poorly on the marketing company more than on the freelancers. But sources require citing the additional reasons as well. Now, plagiarism checkers, there are software where you can check your writing. Plagiarism is not ethical, but sadly it happens often. As noted, sometimes it might feel less severe than other, but plagiarism is always a violation of ethics, and therefore it needs to be defended against where possible. Plagiarism checker is an AI-powered text analysis tool that identifies potential plagiarism and paraphrasing across nearly every language. Search engines, academicians, and agencies alike are clear that using content produced by an AI or third party tool constitutes plagiarism, even if that tool is not human. Although AI has come to a long way in creating more human like text that are interesting to read, it still has a lot to learn about what it means to write in a way that is engaging, unique, and most of all, accurate. Much of the information that an AI writer creates, however realistic it looks, is not exactly rooted in fact and is pulled from various corners of the internet and other sources just to sound that way. As you might imagine, using this kind of text in report, email, other types of writing not only diminishes your own capacity as a writer, but also use AI as more of crutch than a tool. Search engines like Google and Bing are becoming even more sophisticated in their ability to root out content crafted by AI and de-rank it. So it's important that agencies, website buyers, and other professionals use AI writing checkers to determine if a text has been crafted by an AI tool or a human. How do AI checkers know when something has been written by an AI? AI writing platforms like ChatGPT are quite sophisticated in their answers, which means that tools that check for AI-based plagiarism have to be even more cognizant of the telltale tricks and clues that say a robot wrote this. Through a unique set of algorithm and considerable training, it's impossible to sniff out AI-produced content with surprising accuracy. AI content detection tools like Originality.ai are consistently learning and improving with every AI iteration that is introduced on the market. As AI tools become more sophisticated in their ability to produce human-like content, so too must AI detection tools become more advanced in order to fight back and ensure that professionals are getting the authentic, engaging, and factual content they paid for. Copyright. The copyright of the article and other material published in the journal shall lie with the publisher. Permission request, reprints, and photocopies, all rights are reserved. No portion of the content may be reproduced, stored in a retrieval system, or transmitted in any form or by any means, electronic, mechanical, photocopying, recording, or otherwise in any form without prior written permission of the publisher. Now, common excuses for plagiarism. Many people think that plagiarism has to be intentional, and that is just not true. You can think of direct intentional plagiarism as the first degree murder of the plagiarism world. However, manslaughter still carries a considerable sentence. The equivalent in academia or career settings is still going to be serious for you, even if it was unintentional. That said, The "I didn't know" excuse does not carry weight anymore. Considering the amount of time and effort teachers and professors put into helping students understand what plagiarism is and how it happens, it is hard to believe that anyone would not know what they were doing. However, accidentally falling to cite sources or citing them wrong can happen. That's why it's so important to be sure you are attributing everything correctly. More on that in a bit. Consequences of plagiarism, as we all know that songwriters and authors have faced serious repercussions for plagiarism. So one should be very, very careful of such kind of unethical activities. Now, alternative to plagiarism. The simplest strategy to avoid plagiarism is by committing to creating your own original work. That means wherever possible, you should avoid directly quoting others. If you can paraphrase and then attribute work, do that. If you can come up with unique ideas, do that. If you absolutely have to use someone's work in quoted form, that's fine, as long as you use the correct text citation and work cited pages. Attribution is the answer to any potential plagiarism charge, and it will protect your academic integrity from middle school onward. However, since so many plagiarism charges accrue to people who had no idea they were committing an ethical violation, it makes good sense to ensure you are citing sources correctly. That's where a plagiarism checker comes in. It can help you recognize and avoid citation issues in your paper writing, so you are always in the clear. So, what are the do's and don'ts of plagiarism? First, attribute references and describe sources of information. Second, give acknowledgements and provide footnotes. Third, use quotation marks wherever required. Next, paraphrase the original attribute work. Then, for extensive quotations, obtain permission from the publisher of the original work. Then avoid self-plagiarism by taking permission from the publisher of the previous article authored by you. Obtain permission for use of published drawing illustration. Now, ethical practices in research alert researchers at every step, from formulation of research objectives to report publication. The research gap or problem identification of the proposed research is an essential and fundamental part of the research. By nature, humans tend to adopt a shortcut approach to achieve anything in life. Generally, scholars want to submit their thesis as soon as possible and may select a problem with minor modification, resulting in duplication of research work. Research demands identification of a unique problem that adds value to subject domain, otherwise it will be just a repetition of existing research work. Do you think it is unethical to proceed with a problem that has already been solved? Researcher should follow the trend of existing research methodology with a unique set of problem identification. So, privacy in research is very important and sensitive issue that researcher must address. Researcher must ensure that the protection of participants' data privacy by using secure data protection technique and secure data transmission method. In many cases, it is obvious responsibility of a researcher to protect the privacy of research participants even if it is not legally required. Privacy is very personal issue and should be handled with utmost care and sensitivity by the researcher. Legal and ethical responsibility should be taken into account to protect the privacy of the participant. Now, implications of the research. So, researcher must consider the broader ethical implications of the research outcome. The impact of research outcome on individual, groups, society should be thoroughly addressed. Any potential harms or unintended negative consequences must be clearly disclosed by the researcher. Issues such as physical health, children mental health, environmental harm, psychological distress must be addressed both positively and negatively in the implication of research outcome. Autonomy and dignity of research participants. In research, researchers conduct all operations on research participant. The autonomy and dignity of research participant must be protected, which include obtaining informed consent from research participant. Research participant should have clarity about the research objective, outcome, benefit, and risk involved. For example, if a research is conducting a clinical trial of a particular vaccine on the human body, they must clarify the research objective, outcome, benefits, and risk to the research participants. So, integrity of the research process is very important. Ethical standard in research can be elevated only when a researcher practices integrity throughout the research process. So, the onus is on all academicians to increase education and awareness of ethical issues about scientific publication. Allegations of plagiarism should be taken seriously and investigated thoroughly with the help of systematic reviews and spatial software. If plagiarism is detected, an article may not be just rejected, but the employer of the author may be informed and requested to take appropriate action. If published, the article should be retracted. Public disgrace would deter new and recurrent plagiarists. Institutions and professional association should take cognizance of the act of plagiarism and initiate appropriate action. Well, I would like to conclude this, with Albert Einstein word. Many people say that it is the intellect which makes a great scientist. They are wrong. It is character. With this, I wrap up the discussion. Let us meet in another lecture with a new topic. Till then, thank you.